Now, these are the big ones that most people are not considering. These are the ones that I say, really honestly, very, very few financial advisors are going to forget aspirational expenses because they're exciting. Well, tell me about the travel you want to do. Tell me about the vacations that you want to take, because that puts you in an excited, kind of a thoughtful and dreamy mood, position. What kind of gifting would you like to do your friends and family? So these are all really positive things. Folks, you got to pay attention to these potential shock expenses, or things that can have a significant impact to your retirement that you're probably or may not be considering. And unfortunately, most financial professionals are not talking about. Out-of-pocket medical expenses. If you're listening to this and you're over 65, Medicare carries costs, right? You not only pay for the cost of Medicare, and we're going to talk about IRMA and the added potential costs of Medicare, but there are out-of-pocket potential costs of Medicare. And we're going to have a whole discussion about that, so I'm not going to go into discussion about it right now. But if you're over 65 and you're already receiving your Medicare benefits, that there are other things that need to be considered that most people, it's not even on their radar until that happens, until that time comes, or maybe right before it. And if you start planning for your retirement in your 50s, I can guarantee you two things. The cost of medical care after age 65 when you receive Medicare, tax on your Social Security. So three things. The cost of medical care after you start receiving Medicare benefits, tax of your Social Security benefits, and IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amounts. Now, those last two things, or all three of those things, we're going to talk about in more detail in the following weeks. But if you're just doing your retirement planning and you're 50 years old, 55 years old, or in your 40s, these things are not even on your radar. And unfortunately, most financial advisors aren't talking about it. So out-of-pocket medical expenses, out-of-pocket normal medical expenses if you're healthy. How about unexpected medical expenses? And this includes, yes, long-term care. Even though you're taught and you heard, many people who are listening to this broadcast right now, I am sure I'm not the first financial professional that you've listened to. I'm not the first CFP who you've sat down and heard a webinar by. When I do the class, I am certain that I am not the first presenter at a financial class who is going to talk about that you have more than a 70% chance of needing long-term care at some point in your retirement. But people still don't plan for it. People still just hope it doesn't happen to them. Long-term care is a big one. But it just doesn't have to be long-term care. What about, a significant injury or a significant illness that could really derail things? So unexpected medical expenses. These are shock expenses that you just have to be aware of and have as part of your plan. Certainly long-term care. But these other things I mentioned, these other unexpected medical expenses, and it's not just for you, right? If you're fortunate enough to have children and they have medical issues, sometimes we get pulled into those things as well. Housing repairs. Folks, we're dealing with hurricanes, natural disasters, things like that. I mean, there's plenty of people who have beautiful vacation homes in Florida and along the coastal areas that are paying for things they probably never built into their financial plan. So think about these things. Family issues like divorce. And I have kids here because sometimes kids draw from our budget and our cash flow longer than we expect them to. And sometimes that goes well into your retirement. If your kids have physical impairments, medical issues, or mental health issues, you might feel that you want to take care of them for a longer period of time, and that's great if you can. You just want to make sure that it's part of your consideration. And unexpected inflation. So for many, many years, we were seeing very, very low inflation. And when I was talking to people about, you got to be concerned about higher inflation, because we've had low inflation and low interest rates for many, many years, and people got very complacent. And they said, now, or even if they agreed with me and nodded their heads, in the back of their mind, many times they said, Yeah, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. But we've seen it now, haven't we? So inflation is still high. Things still cost a lot of money. Shop for a car right now. It's better than it was last year, this time last year, but it's still pretty crazy. And transportation is one of our essentials, right? So unexpected inflation. We all know that our food costs more. We all know we have to make we have to, or we choose to make different decisions, probably when we're shopping. But unexpected inflation is something you want to consider as well. What most are missing, what most individuals and unfortunately, most financial advisors are missing is higher taxes. Not planning for the potential doubling of higher taxes, probably by year 2030, and how that's going to affect your retirement plan. As I said before, taxation of Social Security, IRMA, we talked about that again, but actual expenses. Most financial advisors or financial planners, because I've seen it over and over again. A new client, new planning client, new client just in general comes to them, and that client says, I spend $8,000 a month. And that financial planner takes that $8,000 a month, plugs it into their retirement plan, and they say, well, hey, this is what it's going to look like. They adjust inflation. They do all those things. They have their inflation rate, whatever it is. And they say, okay, now this $8,000 a month, you're going to project out. Folks, that $8,000 a month is probably wrong. So in the past, I used to say, I don't know why, but we have a lot of engineers as clients, but I know why now. I worked with a coach last year, and we looked at different things. And he said to me, I can tell you exactly why you attract engineers to your practice, because we don't advertise to engineers, we don't all that. But this person says because you have written processes and checklists and certain ways that you get things done, and engineers and people who think that way appreciate that. And I'm not saying that's better than anybody else. It's just the way that we do things here. But we have written processes and checklists that we follow for everything. And people wired that way, or who are trained that way as engineers, they appreciate that. That's what he said to me. So I get that. But so I tell you that because I've had many, many people come and say, Mark, I know we need exactly $7,692 a month, because I've been tracking on a spreadsheet for the last 30 years our expenses, and I know that's exactly what it is. And then I say, that's fine. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to fill out our spreadsheet, and there's nothing great about this spreadsheet except it's just decades of information that we've put together and added and changed things. And when somebody goes through this, I don't know if I've ever had a situation where someone hasn't said, oh, you know what? I wasn't thinking about this. I wasn't thinking about these gifts, or I wasn't thinking about this part of travel. I'm kind of just going, I told you pets is a big thing. Oh, I wasn't considering that. That's something we kind of track on the side because there's a lot of reasons for it, but sometimes you just don't want to acknowledge it. It could be many, many things. So when we go through this exercise, and we hear over and over again from people, geez, that exercise was really, really helpful to us to go through. So whether it's this spreadsheet here, or we have it online, people talk about how helpful that is. And what that often does is it fleshes out this $7,692 a month becomes $10,284 a month. And I'm just kind of making that up, but that's a big difference. And that is not an unusual difference. And I see I'm covering that. So let me go back and just say that when we flesh that out, this $7,692 a month here can become $10,284 a month. And that is a very, very big difference and can have a huge impact on your financial plan and the success of your plan. And listen, I could tell you so many examples of that. So that is what we call actual expenses. And most financial planners, unfortunately, just don't go through that exercise for a couple different reasons. First of all, it takes a lot of time from our point of view. We've got to go through, we've got to have you complete this expense spreadsheet. It's a pain point for some people, and some financial advisors, financial planners, they don't want to make the road difficult because they feel that This is my opinion, that if you make the road difficult or challenging, then people may not come along. What I found is if you really go through and give folks a detailed process and really work out these issues that they are not considering and other professionals likely aren't considering, actual expenses, IRMA, tax on Social Security, higher taxes, for example, then that gives them the comfort and really knowing that they're going to likely have a successful plan or a better opportunity for a successful plan, rather than just kind of rubber stamping. Okay, $8,000 a month, that's what it is. Well, what about this? What about that? You've got to ask those what if questions. Like, what if this happens? What if we have a shock expense? What if we need a new home? What if our daughter who has these issues, needs extra care, needs to move back in with us? What's that going to look like? And just these actual expenses, you just can't take it at face value. You got to dig in and work, and you got to do that every single year, folks. And that is another thing that most are missing, and that is review and update. I'm not talking about portfolio reviews. I'm talking about plan reviews and updates. This work should be done every single year. All right. I think Jerry has a question. Moving to a statement. Moving to a less expensive state for LTC, long-term care expenses, should be considered. You believe this because you say it often, and I appreciate it. The Northeast versus Florida, for example, memory care is $12,000 to $15,000 a month versus $4,000 a month. So Jerry's telling us, and I believe Jerry, but I don't have any information about this. What Jerry's telling us is that one of the things that maybe folks should consider is moving to a different area. And it is very true that cost of care varies greatly from area, state to state. And you can do your own research on that using a tool called the Genworth Cost of Care. If you Google that, you can put in the zip code where you live or where you are looking at potentially residing, towards the end of your life. And you can see what the care costs are there. So that's a good point, Jerry. All right, it is 11:01, folks. I hope this was helpful. So we went over the slot report or the slot questions. We reviewed what happened to markets last week, and we talked about some analyst reports. And then we went over our financial 15, our last 15 minutes or so, a little bit longer today. And today was common retirement mistakes, the part 1 of a 4-part series. That this part was expenses during retirement and what you're probably or could be missing, and unfortunately what most financial advisors and financial planners miss in their retirement planning process. But not our group, folks. We have these processes and checklists in place that give our clients the comfort to help make sure their plans are successful. And that is the only commercial I'm going to give you about that. If you're not signed up for the upcoming class and you want to be, you can reach out to us at questions@attleborowealth.com. That's questions@attleborowealth.com. But all of you should have received invitations and email for that class. If you want to make time to see me and you're not yet a client, you can reach us at questions@attleborowealth.com. If you're a client, you need something, just reach out to us and we'll take care of it for you. But it was good seeing you all. Happy to be back, and we will see you next week on the webinar and maybe Thursday in the class. Thank you and have a great day.